Kids are resilient, my sister said when she kicked my daughter out at 2 a.m. I packed our bags and left forever. A week later, my parents called in panic. I never thought I'd find myself back where it all began, standing on the porch of my childhood home, knuckles hovering inches from the door. My daughter Olivia squeezed my hand, her innocent eyes looking up at me with trust I wasn't sure I deserved. My heart trembling, the moment stretched impossibly long. I knocked. The sound echoed through me like a funeral drum. Mom opened the door. She looked older, smaller somehow. The shock registered on her face for just a moment before it crumpled entirely. "Sarah," she whispered, tears welling instantly. "Oh my God, you came." She reached for me with trembling hands, hesitant as if I might disappear. When she pulled me into her embrace, something inside me fractured. The warmth I'd been denied for so long, the scent of her perfume unchanged after all these years. Dad appeared behind her, his eyes red-rimmed. "We thought we'd never see you again," he said, voice breaking. "We've regretted what happened every day since." That moment, the vulnerability in their faces, the way they looked at Olivia with wonder and shame intermingled. It reached past my defenses, touching a place inside me that still yearned for their approval. That was 6 months ago. The day I made the mistake of believing regret was the same as change. It happened 12 years ago, my senior year of high school. I'd been accepted to NYU, my dream school. The acceptance letter arrived on a Thursday. I remember running through the house screaming with joy, waving that paper like it was a winning lottery ticket. In a way, it was. Mom hugged me. Dad nodded, that tight smile I'd come to recognize as his version of pride. They'd always been reserved with their affection. I understood that, or thought I did. "We'll figure out the money," Mom had said. "Your college fund should cover most of it." My college fund? The one they'd started when I was born? The one they reminded me of every time I wanted something expensive? The sacrifice they made to secure my future. 2 months later, my sister Rebecca announced her engagement to Todd. He was 10 years older, successful, the kind of son-in-law my parents had always wanted. The wedding was planned for June, an extravagant affair with 200 guests. I found out about my college fund over breakfast. A casual conversation, as if they were discussing the weather. "We're using your college fund for Rebecca's wedding," Dad said, not looking up from his newspaper. My spoon clattered against the bowl. "What?" "It's just a loan," Mom added quickly. "Rebecca will pay it back after the honeymoon." But the way Dad's jaw tightened told me everything. This wasn't a loan. This was a reallocation of resources to the daughter who'd always mattered more. I fought, I screamed, I cried, I reminded them of every promise they'd ever made. It didn't matter. "Family comes first," Dad said. "And this is what our family needs right now." I took out loans. I worked 2 jobs. I made it through my first year at community college before dropping out. The exhaustion was too much. The resentment too heavy. Rebecca's wedding was beautiful. I stood beside her in a bridesmaid dress that cost more than my semester's tuition. I smiled in the photos. I toasted the happy couple. Then I left, packed 2 suitcases and moved 3 states away, changed my phone number, started over. 5 years later, I met Daniel. He was kind, patient, everything my family wasn't. When Olivia was born, I felt a fierce protectiveness I'd never experienced before. I swore my daughter would never feel secondary, never question her worth. Another 5 years passed. Rebecca's marriage failed spectacularly. Todd had been hiding gambling debts. The perfect son-in-law wasn't so perfect after all. My parents called. They'd found me through a distant cousin's Facebook page. "We miss you," Mom said. "We miss our granddaughter." Her voice cracked. For the first time, I heard something genuine, something broken. I couldn't deny Olivia her grandparents, not without trying. Everyone deserves a second chance. That's what I told myself. So we moved back, not into their house at first. We rented an apartment nearby. Weekend visits, cautious steps toward reconciliation. Then Dad had his heart attack. My parents' house was too big for them to manage alone. The medical bills piled up. Their retirement savings weren't enough. Just until Dad recovers, I told Daniel when I suggested we move in with them. 3 months, maybe 4, he didn't argue. He never did when it came to family, even when that family had hurt me so deeply. The first month went smoothly. Olivia loved having her grandparents around. Mom taught her to bake cookies. Dad, even in his weakened state, told her stories from his childhood. It started small, Mom casually mentioning they were a bit short for the electric bill. "Just temporary," she assured me. "Until Dad's disability comes through." I wrote the check without hesitation. It felt good to help to be needed. A week later, the car needed repairs. Then the water heater broke. Each time a small request, each time an outpouring of gratitude that filled something empty inside me. "We don't deserve you," Dad said one evening, his hand covering mine. "After everything we put you through." Physical sensations became my language, a racing pulse, breath catching, chest tightening, the validation I'd craved for decades. By the third month, I was paying for everything. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, Dad's medications. Little by little, they had transferred every financial responsibility to my shoulders. Then I discovered the loan. Mom left the statement on the kitchen counter, perhaps accidentally, perhaps a test. $50,000 they had taken out to help Rebecca start her wedding planning business. A business that failed within a year. A loan with 3 missed payments and threatening letters. My hands shook, barely holding together, the weight of unspoken expectations pressing down. Suffocating. I confronted them, my voice surprisingly steady. "Were you going to tell me about this?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We were ashamed," she whispered. "We made another mistake favoring her again. We didn't want you to think." Dad couldn't meet my gaze. "We understand if you can't help, you've already done so much." What was I supposed to do? Let them lose the house? Watch their shame deepen? They needed me. Finally, they needed me. I paid the loan too. All of it. "You're such a blessing," Mom said, tears in her eyes when I showed her the receipt for the final payment. We don't know how we raised someone so forgiving. For a moment, I felt it. The approval I'd been seeking my entire life. The scales finally balanced in my favor. That feeling lasted exactly 2 weeks. Rebecca arrived with her kids, twins, a boy and girl, both 8, the same age as Olivia. Her latest relationship had ended. She needed a place to stay just until she got back on her feet. At first, it was fine, forced smiles and polite conversation. Rebecca seemed genuinely thankful for the help. She even brought a housewarming gift, a cheap candle, but the gesture surprised me. "I've grown up a lot," she told me over coffee that first morning, her voice softer than I remembered. "Motherhood changes you." I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible. First came the small liberties. Rebecca borrowing my clothes without asking, using my expensive face creams, small intrusions that seemed petty to complain about. Then came the comments. Little digs disguised as observations. "Olivia's so quiet, my kids are so outgoing," she'd say at dinner, a prideful smile playing on her lips. Or, "Don't you think Olivia watches too much TV? My kids prefer educational activities." Each comparison a paper cut, insignificant alone, unbearable in accumulation. I watched my parents' response to her return. The quiet gratitude they'd shown me began to diminish as their attention shifted. Their eyes lit up when Rebecca entered a room. They laughed louder at her jokes, the familiar dynamic re-emerging like a pattern I couldn't unsee. By the third week, priorities had clearly shifted. Rebecca's twins received new toys because they'd been through so much. Olivia's requests were met with "maybe later." Sweetie, my daughter, wise beyond her years, noticed everything. "Mommy, why does Grandma always ask what the twins want for dinner?" she whispered one night, her small voice tight with hurt. The room felt smaller, memories larger than the walls could contain. A universe of unresolved emotions condensed into this single breathless moment. My heart shattered. "I don't know, baby." The truth tasted like metal on my tongue. Rebecca's encroachment continued inch by careful inch. She'd ask Olivia to keep an eye on the twins while she made a quick call. The calls grew longer, more frequent. "She's so good with them," Mom would gush, as if Olivia's role as unpaid childminder was a compliment. I'd catch my daughter reading to her cousins or helping them with games, her childhood slipping away as she took on responsibilities that weren't hers. "It's family helping family," Rebecca said dismissively when I mentioned it. "The kids love spending time together." But I saw the weariness in Olivia's eyes, the way she'd check her cousin's needs before expressing her own. A pattern I recognized too well. I confronted her. "Olivia is not your nanny." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. Kids watch other kids all the time." I took it to our parents. They sided with Rebecca. "She's going through a hard time," Mom said. "We need to support her." The implication was clear. My stability made me less deserving of consideration. I had to travel for work 3 days in Chicago, an important client. I couldn't reschedule. "We'll take good care of Olivia," Mom promised, her hand resting on my shoulder with practiced tenderness. I believed her, fragments of hope still clinging to reason. Another mistake in a lifetime of misplaced trust. The first day away, Olivia's voice was bright during our nightly call. Small talk about cookies with Grandma, a movie with her cousins, normal things, safe things. The second day, something shifted. Her words came quicker, less detail. When I asked about her day, a pause stretched between us like a warning. "It's fine," she said finally, too small a voice for my vibrant child. My stomach twisted, instinct awakening, the primal knowledge of a mother sensing danger. "Are you sure, sweetie, you can tell me anything?" "I know." Another pause. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too." I hung up, dread spreading through me like ink in water, staining everything it touched. That night sleep evaded me. Memories surfaced unbidden. My childhood bedroom, The way I'd make myself small, invisible. The less space I occupied, the less I could be faulted for existing in their world. Was Olivia learning the same terrible lesson? My phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Olivia's small face illuminating the screen. My heart stopped. "Mommy?" Her voice broke on the words shattered into jagged pieces that cut through my chest. "What's wrong, baby?" I was already out of bed, throwing clothes into my suitcase with one hand. She was crying. The sound of her tears unmade me, atom by atom. "Aunt Rebecca kicked me out of my room," she sobbed. "She said her kids needed it more. My stuff is in the hall." Grandma and Grandpa didn't say anything. Time slowed then accelerated. My vision tunneling to a single point of blinding rage. "Put Grandma on the phone. She's sleeping." "They're all sleeping. I'm in the bathroom hiding." My child was hiding to call me. "I'm coming home right now." "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words a knife between my ribs. "This isn't your fault. Not any of it." I called my parents after hanging up. The phone rang and rang. I called Rebecca straight to voicemail. I took the first flight home. Every minute stretched into hours. Every mile a marathon. My body vibrating with fury and fear and the crushing weight of my own failings. How had I let this happen? Again, the endless cycle of hope and betrayal playing out with my daughter as collateral damage. My knuckles turned white around the steering wheel as I drove from the airport. The familiar streets mocking me with their normalcy, as if the world hadn't altered fundamentally overnight. The scene that greeted me was worse than I'd imagined. Olivia's belongings were piled in the hallway. Books and clothes spilling from hastily packed boxes. Her treasured snow globe collection, each one a memory from our travels, broken on the floor. Her mattress had been moved to a corner of the living room. Rebecca's children were jumping on it, turning my daughter's bed into a trampoline. Their laughter like acid in my ears. Olivia sat on the stairs watching, her small face streaked with tears. Defeated in a way no child should ever be. She saw me first, relief flooding her features. She ran to me, collided with my body. I held her so tight I feared she might break, but she was already broken. We both were. Rebecca emerged from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. Surprise flickered across her face before settling into practiced innocence. "You're back early," she said, as if commenting on the weather. The rage inside me was a living thing, clawing, screaming, demanding release. "What the hell is this?" My voice sounded foreign, dangerous. Rebecca shrugged, a single dismissive movement that erased Olivia's pain. "The kids were fighting in their room. This is a temporary solution. Throwing my daughter's things into the hallway, breaking her belongings, that's your solution. Don't be so dramatic. Kids are resilient." I exploded. Years of repressed rage burst out of me like a geyser. Words I'd held back for a lifetime. Truths too sharp to swallow any longer. Rebecca smirked. "There's the ungrateful Sarah we all remember." My parents appeared from the kitchen. They looked annoyed. Not at Rebecca, at me. The disruption, the inconvenience of my anger. "You're making a scene," Mom hissed, eyes darting to the neighbors' windows, always more concerned with appearances than feelings. "You're damn right I am," I shot back. "You let this happen again. You watched my child be displaced and did nothing." Dad stepped forward, his jaw set in that familiar way that had silenced me as a child. "Your sister's children need stability right now." "And my child doesn't?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Mom sighed, shoulders dropping in defeat or resignation. "Maybe this living arrangement isn't working anymore. You and Olivia, you just don't seem to fit here. Just don't seem to fit." 5 words that confirmed what I'd always known but refused to accept. I would never be enough. And now my daughter was paying the price for my stubborn hope. My chest constricted, breathing became a conscious effort. "You're right," I said finally. "We don't fit here. We never did." I turned to Olivia, still clinging to my side. "Pack what you can carry, sweetheart. We're leaving." "Now?" Mom's voice rose an octave, genuine surprise, as if she'd expected me to absorb this latest wound and carry on like always. "Now." "But the bills," Dad started. "The mortgage." I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not family, not love, not what's best for the children, just who's paying the bills." I packed our things that night. Methodical, mechanical, each item representing a failed attempt at belonging. Olivia worked silently beside me, 10 years old and already understanding too much about conditional love. Daniel met us at our old apartment, which thankfully we hadn't given up yet. His eyes widened at the sight of us, disheveled, tear-stained, carrying hastily packed bags at midnight. He didn't say "I told you so." He didn't demand explanations. He just held me while I cried, then helped Olivia set up her bed, making sure her favorite stuffed animal was tucked in beside her. At that moment, I saw what family should be. Not blood, not obligation, but this quiet act of care without expectation. When Olivia finally fell asleep, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table. steam rising from mugs of tea neither of us would drink. I should have listened to you, I whispered. He shook his head. You needed to try for yourself, for Olivia. I exposed her to their toxicity, their favoritism. My voice broke. She's going to carry these scars. Yes, he agreed, his honesty a balm. But she's also going to remember that her mother chose her, that you put her first when no one put you first. His words penetrated the fog of my self-recrimination, a small light in the darkness. The next day, I stopped all financial support. No more mortgage payments. No more utility bills. No more groceries. My hands trembled as I canceled the automatic transfers. Was I punishing them or finally setting myself free? Both. Neither. The lines blurred in the aftermath of betrayal. My mother called a week later, panic in her voice. The bank called about the mortgage. She said, "We can't make the payment without your help." I closed my eyes, saw Olivia's face streaked with tears, her belongings scattered in the hallway, her trust in me and family fractured because I'd placed her in harm's way. My breath caught, held, released. "That's not my problem anymore, but we're family," she insisted. The word wielded like a weapon, a chain meant to bind me to obligation. "Yes," I agreed, "and family should protect each other like you protected Rebecca's children over Olivia." The silence stretched between us filled with decades of unspoken hurt. "We never meant to hurt you," she finally said. "Or Olivia. But you did every time and I let you." My finger hovered over the end call button. A lifetime of conditioning urging me to apologize, to make it right, to shrink myself. Not anymore. "Sarah, please." I hung up, blocked their number. The relief was immediate, physical, as if gravity had lessened its hold. My shoulders dropped, my breathing deepened. Was this healing or just another form of breaking? 3 months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my parents lost the house to foreclosure. Rebecca moved in with another friend, burning that bridge within weeks. I should have felt guilt or satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing but a profound emptiness, a space where pain had lived for so long, now vacant, waiting to be filled with something new. Olivia and I settled back into our apartment. Daniel joined us for dinner most nights. We created new traditions: game nights, Sunday baking, a nighttime ritual of sharing our rose best part of the day and thorn worst part. Slowly, Olivia's smile returned, full and uninhibited, not the careful one she'd worn in my parents' house. I started therapy, began unpacking the years of conditional love and emotional manipulation. The sessions were grueling, excavating buried truths, confronting the ways I'd allowed myself to be diminished. Why did they always choose her? I asked my therapist during one session the question that had haunted me for years, finally spoken aloud. "Some parents confuse need with love," she replied. "Rebecca's chaos made her seem more in need of support. Your independence was mistaken for not needing them. It didn't excuse their behavior. Nothing could, but it helped me understand. And I repeated the pattern," I admitted, moving back, hoping for a different outcome. "Patterns are powerful," she said gently. "Breaking them takes tremendous courage." Was that what I'd done? Shown courage? It felt more like desperation, the instinct to protect Olivia overriding decades of conditioned response. 6 months after we left, Olivia asked about her grandparents. We were baking cookies, her grandfather's recipe. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Do you miss them?" I asked carefully. She nodded, then shook her head, confused by her own feelings. "I miss the good parts, when Grandma taught me to knit, when Grandpa told stories." My chest tightened, the complex truth of loving flawed people. "It's okay to miss the good parts," I told her. "And it's okay to be angry about the bad parts." "Are you still angry?" Her eyes so much like mine, searching my face for guidance. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But mostly I'm sad for what could have been." I told her the truth in age-appropriate terms, that sometimes people can love you but still hurt you. That it's okay to love someone from a distance if being close to them causes pain. "Like looking at the sun through special glasses?" she